All right, we are joined by two super duper cool women today. Kimberly Thiessen, who runs Living Sky Tannery tucked in the mountains of Idaho, along with her husband and a gaggle of adorable children. Hopefully, some of them will run across the background of this call if we're lucky. They tend their own flock of sheep and also offer vegetable tanning processing. And then we have Lacey Jean Carr, who has lived many lives in the time that I've known her as a shepherdess, as a butcher. She's an incredible mama, teacher, and instructor. And she is based all over the West. I never know where she lives, but I think today she's joining us from Boise. So thank you, Kimberly and Lacey Jean, so much for joining us. This is honestly kind of a dream for me to have you both in the same conversation. So thanks. How y'all doing this morning?
Doing great. Yeah, it's a beautiful day here in Boise as well. The temperatures have finally started to cool down a little, but it's still beautiful out. Couldn't ask for better.
Outstanding. Well, first off, I would love for you to just each tell me a little bit about your background. Maybe a little history on how you got into the work that you're doing, and then what each of your businesses looks like today. And Lacey Jean, if you want to kick us off, that'd be great.
Sure. So I'm Lacey or Lacey Jean. I am based out of the Columbia River Gorge, White Salmon area, as well as now Boise. I also spend a good amount of time out in Montana. So I sort of have this little triangle of homes, and I absolutely love the travel part of my work. I tell people that I primarily just work with sheep and the seasons of sheep. So I am a contract shepherd sometimes, usually during the spring for lambing. I offer custom slaughter and butchery of sheep and hide tanning. And then I also teach workshops. And the work essentially has just sort of it's just doors continue to open as I pursue passions, and sheep have just sort of captured my heart. I love everything about them and all the products that you can use from them. I love the community that I've found through working with sheep. It all sort of started as I was a mom to younger children many years ago, and was looking for ways to grow and raise more of my food at home. And sheep just sort of came across my radar as being the ultimate all-purpose animal. And from there, I started learning the different parts of raising and processing the animal, and wanted to know how to do all parts. And that's led me here.
And how about you, Kimberly? Give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Idaho, and then I dropped out of college playing volleyball at Boise State and married a farmer up in Canada. And so we were there commercial grain farming around 16,000 acres when I moved there, and just kind of realized that it wasn't what we wanted to do, spraying chemical all the time. Mother-in-law got sick, and I really dove into dairy cows and just raising our own. So she passed away, and we moved back to my home state of Idaho here, and we needed something to do because farming on that small of a scale on 40 acres wasn't going to do it. So on a whim, I went to actually, Lacey, you taught at one of the classes this last year, but I went to it a couple years ago, and they had a sheep kind of shepherds got together and were talking, and I just sat in and listened, and they all had this thing that there was so many parts of the sheep being wasted. They needed another outlet. And so kind of on a whim, I was like, let's figure out how to tan without chemicals. So we trained over in Europe, brought it back, and that's kind of what we've been doing since. And we raise Romneys as well. So we're on 40 acres, and then we lease about 175. So, and we've got 4 kids.
Plenty to keep you busy.
Yeah.
Well, I would love if you would each talk a little bit just about like how your processes work. I know you both put a lot of thought into how you tan hides, so could you each share a little bit about that? And Kimberly, I'll start with you this time.
Well, we use mimosa bark, and that is the main tannin agent that we use. We wanted to make sure that the kids could join, because they'll go finish the hides. They don't do any of the wet side, but they'll finish the hides. And we do use some chemicals, but it's what's in like wine preservation and toothpaste. So they're super diluted. We put our hands in the tanks. I'm not sure. Do you want to know?
Yeah, just kind of walk me through the whole
specifics that
like
you want? I mean,
like yeah. I send you I mean I can't bring a whole sheep to you and say make this into a
right.
rubber. So what do you need to get started?
Yeah, so that is the hardest. Well, we might get into that. But after it's butchered, we say grab it from the butcher as soon as possible, salt it up, and then you'll salt it, let it sit, shake it off, salt it again, and in about 3 weeks, it's kind of like we say like bacon. You're ready to send it off to us. And from there, it goes into a washing machine. It gets all washed up, goes into a pickle solution. And then from there, it gets fleshed on the back with a hand flesher. And then it goes into our tanks for about 10 days. If it's a lamb, if it's a ram, it can take over a month to get that solution pushed through. And then we hang them up, dry the wool after they're washed again from the solution. We put them in the drying cupboard where we staple them to boards. They dry, they get pulled off and buffed to the backs to soften them, and through our hand comb or picked if needed. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get processed. So
yeah. And what does it cost for someone to have a hide done by you?
So our short wools are $125 and our long wools are $175.
Cool. And Lacey Jean, tell me a little bit about your process. I know your approach is a little different.
Yeah, when I first started getting into tanning, I would go to a butcher shop or to a meat processor and pick up skins on the day that they were processing sheep. I had to be there precisely at 11 o'clock. All the hides were in a big bin with entrails and heads and flies, and it was gross. And I'd have to get in there and dig around and find the skins that I wanted. And I started out doing a brain tan and smoke process, or fat liquoring and smoke. There's a few different names for it. I did that for about 8 years. Also had my own flock for a little while, and was processing or tanning the skins from my own flock. And I began to do my own sheep processing because I noticed, the meat processors and the butchers, they're working on a pretty tight timeline, and they're trying to, obviously their product is the carcass and the meat. The hides aren't necessarily their biggest concern, so they were coming off with a lot of holes in them or like knife marks. Not all the time, but it's just what they need to do in order to get the product moved along. So I decided I was going to learn how to do the skinning process so that I could skin the sheep with really, with my hands for the most part, so that I could get a nice clean hide. And so recently I switched over to the mimosa bark tanning process as well. It's just a little bit easier to have consistent results at all times of the year. Brain and bark tan really relies on the weather kind of working in my favor on a lot of different, in a lot of different ways. And for a stretch of time, you really need a good consistent week of nice, dry, warm weather. So I've really, really enjoyed and feel like I'm still learning a lot about the mimosa bark tanning process. I'm so fascinated by Kimberly's, what she just mentioned about it taking up to a month on some of the skins. I feel like there are still parts of it that I'm learning as well. So it's fascinating, and I'm really enjoying learning new things about it.
And you guys both, I don't know, Lacey Jean, if you still do sell hides. I'm assuming Kimberly, you are all hides as a enterprise. So where do your hides go when you sell them? Like, what kind of products are you selling, and what are people using them for? And I'll pick on you, Lacey Jean, because I think Kimberly.
Sure. All of my skins are sold online through my my Instagram page has found my demographic of people that are looking for what I have to offer. I'm so grateful for the internet for that reason. It's given me a business and my people. So I sell them on my website via my Instagram page. I also do skin collars that I make, like big, they can be they can look more like a cloak or a big shawl, and sometimes they're just like a smaller collar. And those products have been really a hit, and I enjoy making those. And then just the full skins. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing kind of like what price points those things go for?
Sure. Yeah. So the skins are range from 300 to 500. And then and above, depending on how large it is. I'm starting to kind of push a little bit further past the $500 mark these days. And then the collars can go from 100 to 300.
Cool.
Yeah.
Kimberly, same question for you.
Yeah, so we just sell the hides right now, the rugs. I would like to, my husband just started kind of dabbling in the leather side of it. So I have some really cool ideas that I'm hoping I can push him to take, because we get some hides in that, if we miss that window of butchering, you just have a mess of wool and there's nothing you can do about it. Every sheep molts eventually, not just hair sheep, not just your Jacobs, or every sheep will molt. And so if you get past that, you just get a mess of a hide that you have to deal with. So I'm hoping I can talk him into making leather with those. But we're at the same price point as Lacey. We're also trying to kind of push ahead. We did our first show at Trailing of the Sheep this last weekend, and it was actually, man, I spent like 2 weeks trying to get prepared for this and really bust out a beautiful booth. And we had a lot of comments that it was, but I think we sold 4. It was really disappointing. It was a market. I think the market is so important on where you hit. It was a lot of small things. That's what people were looking for. And there's a lot of hides there, that are $100, $150. So you have to find, like Lacey said, your people. Absolutely.
There's just a question in the chat. I want to make sure we grab somebody's headphones cut out. So once a hide begins to molt, molt in the tanning process, is it no good anymore? Like you have to get it in that right window, or it's not usable as a pelt, like a hair on hide anymore.
I imagine maybe Lacey, correct me if I'm wrong, your process being a little bit more hands-on would be able to could maybe deal with that a little bit better than ours. I could be wrong, but like this one here, I don't know, it just happens to be sitting behind me here. This was one of our Gotlands. So you can tell it molted. I mean, it pulls off. So there's an entire layer of wool because the new wool is growing underneath that pulls off. And so this used to be locks. And you just can't keep the locks anymore. I think I have one back here I could show you. It's not wasted. It's just not as beautiful.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's a use for every hide. It just might not be the full fluffy skin. And it really is pretty time consuming to sit and like pull out where that wool break is. I had one that was just absolutely beautiful, this Icelandic hide. And I was so excited about it, and I got it out of the tannin, and I was doing the last final brush, and like just clumps started coming out, and I was so distraught because it was just this beautiful like morit, which is sort of that coppery brown color, and it had like faded, into lighter color. It was just stunning. So I pulled all the wool and ended up using the wool for a different project, and then the resulting skin was this really cool, very short wooled hide that ended up being, somebody wanted a really short wool for a crib layer for their baby, so it ended up working out really well for that. So I just think that there's a purpose for it. It's just you got to be creative.
I want to ask Kimberly about what you just said about price points of hides. I mean, I think meat producers have this same issue as well. Like, we're up against grocery store prices that are, you know, like just a fraction of what we sell our product for. And I know, and there's so much work and care that goes into it. And it's sometimes really difficult to like articulate the value of all of that. And I imagine that the hide market is really similar. You know, you can buy a sheepskin off of Amazon for $99, and that's less than even what your cost of production for for having a hide tanned is. So I'm curious, yeah, just how you guys have, how you have each approached the story around your hides, or kind of the branding or marketing piece of it. Um, and Kimberly, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I find marketing just fascinating, and I hate it. It's fascinating, but I hate it. But it has to be done, and I think I hated it because I felt like I was sleazy when I did it. But now that I've really dove in, I understand it a little bit more. So starting out, we kind of assumed that our market would be affluent people. Like that's, somebody like me is not going to go buy a $500 hide. So I was like, it's going to be affluent people. Well, we just did our last launch in the fall last year, and our $575 hides sold first. And I looked back at who bought them, and it was Instagram. I could follow them through Instagram. These were not affluent people. These were people that believed in what we believed. They had our values. And there's a book called, is it Finding Your Why, or Starts with Why? I think it's by Simon Sinek. You know what I'm talking about, Beth? It's a great book, and he talks about this, and it is so true. Just being genuine and showing those values is worth it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, is what he said.
And how about you, Lacey Jean? I mean, I know you're kind of a marketing mastermind, although I don't know if that was intentional or just because your Instagram turned into that. But yeah, what's your approach?
I fully am in the same camp as Kimberly with it, in terms of when I first started, I decided sort of my mission was going to be that I was always going to produce things that I wanted, and I felt very passionate about that. Like, integrity was going to be kind of my foundation. And there's another book, I haven't actually read it, but a friend just told me about it, by Rick Rubin, and it's essentially about the creative process and why you should never create for other people or to sell. You should be creating because it's something that like means something to you, and it's like a heart, a sole purpose. And that resonates with me, because there's so much out there that is being sold to people. I've never wanted to try to sell something. I essentially just want to create something and bring people along in the process. And through that, people are just looking for story right now. There's just so much out there to buy. And there's a lot of cheap stuff that doesn't have story or soul. People are looking for a connection. They're looking for a story in the things that fill their home. And so I figure if I am, other people are as well. And so those are my people. I don't try to convince the person that wants the $100 Amazon sheepskin to buy mine, because that's going to be their own process. At some point, they might decide, like, you know what, the thing in my house that I love the most is the thing that has a story behind it. I want more of that. And then they're going to come find people like myself and Kim or Kimberly. It stops being about the money, and it starts being more about, like, I want the thing that has meaning to me.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why Instagram has been such a successful platform for you. I've followed you for an embarrassingly long time for both of us.
Well,
Probably.
likewise.
Us very much. But you write so beautifully and like really vulnerably about your life, and a lot of times it doesn't come off as marketing or like trying to sell a hide, but I think people do get a glimpse into something very, very real and very juicy through your online presence, and I'm sure that helps them have a connection to the product.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear from both of you. You both have such incredibly laborious processes which shows in the quality of your product, but like, is there a piece of the process for you that you wish was easier, or you wish was automated, or you wish you were doing a different way than you are right now? Kimberly, I saw your eyes think about something.
Um, I didn't think my body would get tired. You know, like you play sports your whole life or you do physical activity and you think, oh, people are just weenies. But uh picking, like, you know, I cannot send something out that I wouldn't want on my own couch. And so when you get something in that has molted a little bit and it doesn't look as good as you know it could, it's so frustrating because you just want to sit and pick it all apart. And I wish there was a different way to do that. I've hired the kids, so I use child labor a little bit. They get paid. But yeah, I mean, it can take hours on some of these really pretty hides. That is actually probably the biggest thing. My husband would probably say something different on the wet side of it, but I don't deal with that. So
How about you, Lacey?
Yeah, that resonates so much. Kimberly, the picking, like, it's amazing how, you know, people think that the flushing part of it or the stretching part of it or something else is the most laborious, but it truly, like, brushing out and picking and like trying to preserve those beautiful locks on the sheep, that can be, I mean, there are a couple skins that I think I've put 10 hours of brushing, like inch by inch, because I knew it could be beautiful if I just applied the time. And those are really a labor of love. But I think that what I would make my process easier at this point would just be to have a setup that was permanent. My setup is sort of, it's constantly moving and traveling with me, and that's lovely. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to tan in various places. But I'm starting to get a little bit, I'm ready for something a little more permanent and maybe in a building with hot water that I can use
Little
on
things
tap,
we take for granted.
Oh, the little things. Something I can like spray down the floors, and you know, it's just a matter of like trying to decide at what point do you scale up? Do you scale up? Is that important to me? Because I work seasonally, it allows my body to rest a little bit. Like I'm getting to the end of my hide tanning for the year. And I move more into like slaughter processing and writing, and I'm looking forward to, my body's a little tired.
Yeah.
Maybe a massage therapist would. Can I add that to my process?
Me too, sis.
you mentioned that about seasonality, and I think about that. Like I sat in while our butcher processed a hide, and I've taken the animals in so many times, and we've done them to ourselves, but we get to change jobs. And I think about a butcher, and here we shut down for a little bit because we have to, like,
Yeah,
Lacey, your hands, everything just needs to change of pace. But I think of butchers like, oh my goodness, it's the same thing all the time. And I have so much respect for that. So proud of your body.
Absolutely. Kimberly, I know you're actually in your tanning studio right now. Do you mind just shifting your camera over so we can see a little bit of
I can give you guys a little run around.
Oh my God, yeah, that would be amazing.
I don't know how to, oh, I guess it's not a phone. I have to just carry you like this. I'm sorry. So it's nothing special. It would be a lot prettier if I had control of everything, but
it's inside a building. You're already making Lacey jealous.
So
it looks beautiful to me.
So we started out with this old washing machine off of Craigslist, just hoping that it worked. And then after going for a couple of years, we were able to afford a new one, which was amazing. And they actually installed ours somewhere else. And so we got upgraded for free, which was like, sure. But yeah, so we have a pickle tank where it sits in. This is the flushing wheel. Hopefully I'm not making y'all dizzy. And then we have tannin tanks for each day of the week. So they'll come out of there. And then, is this working okay? Sorry, guys. And you're talking about the humidity. Like, we're super dry here. We trained in the UK, where it was wet. And so they taught us to use, we have a drying cupboard. So it has a dehumidifier and heat tape under concrete that we put in. So that helps.
Brilliant. Oh my
humidity.
gosh.
And it's super simple. I mean, we built it, everything was built, my husband built everything himself. And then that's where we buffed the backs to soften them. So he built a wheel with carbide bit on it. And then if they're, you know, if the locks, it won't work, then we have to run them through a comb if they're matted up, which happens on certain breeds. So that's our tannery.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to pin Lacey too so we can see you both. How do I pin you both? It's not letting me do that for some reason. Okay. Yeah, really appreciate that. I'm curious, do y'all have some questions for each other?
Yes, absolutely. Kimberly, I'm so curious if you guys, well, a couple of things. Do you feel like you have a setup that is keeping up with your demand, with how many hides are being sent in? Are you turning people away? Do you have a waiting list? That's my first question.
So when we started out in Weiser, which is about an hour south, and we sold that farm and moved up here. And when we were in Weiser, we were backlogged for a couple months. But since we moved, we actually have not been backlogged. We actually put it down for just a little bit. So, and I haven't advertised it. I don't know if that has something to do with it. I don't know if there's more tanneries up. But our regular customers have started coming back.
That's so cool.
And then 1,000 a year if we were trucking it out. I mean, we would have to go all year long, every day of the week. It would be hard, but that's what our tanks can handle.
Do you have any part of your process that you would like to upgrade, or do you feel like you have what you need?
I would like to be able to handle larger animals somehow.
What would that look like? Like, do you want to do beef or like steer hides?
So I had a milk cow that I had to put down, and my husband was so sweet. He surprised me. He had skinned her and surprised me with a hide, and he ran it through the process. And yeah, it took 2 months to get that the tannin naturally to push through that dense hide. So
that's incredible.
If I could figure out a way to use our process and do that, and maybe not have to muscle those huge hides around. So, and it's stiff, you know, it's super stiff because it's been sitting in there so long.
Yeah.
So I would love those beautiful, there's a couple of guys that have those beautiful wood drums.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I am envious of setups like that. I keep getting requests to do steer hides, elk hides, and then I currently have 10 bison hides under salt that I don't know why I decided to take these on. I mean, it's not for commission. I don't do any commission work. They were just gifted to me. And at some point, yeah, I think I'm going to have to figure out some pulley system with, you know, something's going to have to help me pick those things up out of the tanks, because there's just no way to do that by myself.
Maybe we can put our head together and come up with something.
I'm coming out to visit.
All right.
Love that. We already have so much synergy coming out of this call. Yeah, what does a sheep hide weigh when it's all soaking wet? It must be a couple 100 pounds easily.
Yeah, probably.
Like a big one for sure.
Yeah, so a bison, just must be
I mean, just they're dry right now and they weigh probably 100 pounds. It's impressive.
And Lacey, you're not a very big gal. You're muscling those things.
I like to think I am, but my limitations are definitely apparent in situations like that.
Oh, I think you obviously have the grit to get her done, because
Oh, my body is starting to protest more and more these years. Starting to get more tired.
Well, actually, that's a question I have both of you. If you don't mind me asking about like just what aging in this work is like, um, and also being a woman in this work, you have maybe some physical disadvantages mechanically sometimes, and then yeah, we are all against the clock in terms of how long our bodies are going to be functional. So, have you learned any lessons about how to make the work more sustainable over time, or friendly to people with different types of bodies?
Mm.
That was my question to Lacey, actually, that I wrote down to ask her is, what do you do when it starts wearing on you?
Yeah. I think I really am grateful for the seasonality of what I do and the fact that I don't do commission work. So I do have that in my favor. So if I need to take a break from hide tanning, I can do something else, or I can do like a workshop, which doesn't take quite as much physical strength. However, I think that more and more, so I'm in my early 40s, and I notice you take a month off of doing work and your body reflects that. And if you work yourself really, really hard, your body reflects that pretty quickly. And so I've been doing a lot more just focusing on agility work. I join a gym during the winter just to keep myself conditioned and agile. And food, food is just, it's so important to me to eat really, really well and take care of myself. Sleep. I sleep, like I prioritize sleep like nobody's business. Nothing is going to interfere with my sleep. But I think going forward, it's going to look like getting more and more creative. It's going to look like maybe getting a fleshing wheel. That's something I've got my eye on. It looks like being more community oriented. I might at some point, I get requests often for interns or somebody that would like to shadow. I would like to be in a place at some point where I can bring in some people that are interested in learning the process and maybe handing off some of these harder jobs to the younger generation as I, move out of that season of life.
We haven't talked about skulls much, but I know at least you, Lacey, have dabbled a little in the skull world. Kimberly, have you done any trying to market for clean skulls?
Oh, the most we've done is take the ram and bury it, bury the head. So I would love to learn more about that because we get some really cool caracal rams.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. Do you have any pearls of wisdom for us around skulls?
Yeah. So I feel like in many things you can go as far and as nerd out on it as much as you want and really go into having all the equipment and the setup. I keep my setup very, very simple. I kind of let nature do the work for me. So I have these rubber totes, like your, I don't know, 20-gallon Rubbermaid totes, and I poke holes in the bottom of the tote and then a couple in the lid. I will take a fresh head, you don't have to skin it or anything, and put it into some kind of composting matter. Like I'll take mucky straw from the barn or just some good quality dirt and some wood chips or something, and bury the skull in that. And then you want to place it somewhere where it's going to get warm throughout the day. So this process doesn't necessarily work very well in the winter unless you can put it somewhere where it's going to get warm. And then that heat is going to, speed up the decay process, and the holes are going to allow bugs and critters to crawl in there and do what they do best. My only advice during that process would be to open up the lid after a few days and pop off the horn sheaths of sheep. I believe goats have a horn sheath as well. Do they? Yeah. Yeah. And because those will deteriorate, they're kind of like a cartilage, and they'll start to break down and get all like gnarly looking. Take those out. You can clean and polish those and put them back on once the skull is fully cleaned. In the heat of the summer, it'll be 10 days and the skull will be completely decomposed right down to the bone. I wash it off, scrub it with a little wire brush just to get any bits of tissue that are still on there. And then I put it on top of like a tin roof somewhere where the heat and the sun are going to bake down on it. And that'll bleach it out without any chemicals. Yep.
Amazing. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. I've been putting mine in my compost pile, so that's like added
Perfect.
a little bit of sophistication, but I really appreciate that. And then I'm assuming those mostly get sold for decor, like people are just hanging them on the wall, like me.
Yeah, like uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think again, like I appreciate so much having a social media. I know there are downsides to social media, but the plus side is getting to share story with people so people can watch the process from start to finish, the animal to the byproducts of the animal. They get invested. And then when they buy something from myself or from Kimberly, they have some backstory to it. So when they buy a skull, it's not just a skull. It's something that has meaning and a story behind it. So it's a cool
Yeah,
piece of decor in my opinion.
agreed. I'm a bone girl.
I have a
Mhm.
question, Lacey, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I just thought of something. How do you balance? Because that's where I struggle is balancing, I'll do social media and I will just be like, I just want to go out and see my animals and not think about what shot I should get or what
Mhm.
I should film. And so I'll just stop for
Mhm.
months. How do you find that balance or what's your trick for that? For showing your story and not overdoing it or
Totally. I think I give myself permission when it doesn't feel good. I don't force it. So like right now, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a step back from social media because I'm just burnt out. I'm tired. The end of the summer has us all feeling a little bit run ragged, I think. Um, so I just take a step back. I love photography. So usually I'm out taking pictures because something strikes me as beautiful. And then later on, when I've got something I'd like to share, I can look back and find a good picture. It's very rare that I go out with a story in mind or a thought that I want to share, and then I go find a picture or take a picture for that. I think my process is just making sure every part is because I love to do it and not because I feel like I have to. So there's got to be a way, I think, for all of us, whether it's we are storytellers or we are photographers or we are just really passionate about what we do. I think there's going to be a way that doesn't force us to be somebody that we're not. And so leaning into the aspect of it that you're like, this is where I really shine. I love this part of it. And I'm not necessarily sure how that lends itself to social media, but maybe it's bringing in somebody that loves it, I don't know. I don't know if that fully answers your question either. I can I can try to go a little further into detail if you'd like.
it helps.
Yeah, I think that was helpful, and I think just giving yourself a permission to take a break from it when you're not
Mhm.
feeling inspired to share.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I really don't like the idea that we have to, I talk to a lot of people and they say things like, well, social media really wants a story or they really want pretty pictures all the time. And I'm like, I I would just love to see more of us doing the parts of it that feel good because that's what people notice and it's reflected, like you can really tell. There's just our world is so built around being advertised to, and I think more of us just want truth and connection on authenticity. So more of that, I think, is the key.
Mm, here.
Mm.
Well, it's come to the part of the hour where we open up the floor to audience questions. So, if you'd like to speak with your voice, you can use the little hand raisey thingy, or if you would like to speak with your fingers, you can type in chat. And if you don't want to ask any questions, I'm going to keep asking some myself. um, Yeah, we did have a question in the chat. I don't want to skip over it because I find it fascinating. I don't assume either of you know anything about this. But we did get a question about some bits and pieces from other species. Any idea on what to do with goose down? Or know anybody that's doing something cool in the down world? We would love to do a webinar on this in the future, by the way. It's on the list. This is open for anyone in the chat. Anybody know anything about goose down? We're looking for a guy or a gal. Nothing. Okay, so that's something. Apparently, I need to go start a goose down cleaning business. This is what I'm hearing from that. Any other questions in the chat?
Beth, it looks like Jake's got his hand raised there.
Oh, Jake, let's hear it.
Hi, thank you. I'm curious, it's been really great to hear you guys talk about the hides and the skulls. How about some of the other bits and pieces like fat, bones, some of the bits and pieces that come from the butchering process?
Yeah, I can speak to that because it's a passion of mine to find something for everything. There's a use for all of it. And I am such an advocate for those lesser used parts because those parts tend to have some of the most amazing value, truly, like the fat. Rendering that down and turning it into various body products or just to have the fat to cook with. The other day, my partner and I made mutton tallow fries. So we rendered down a whole bunch of fat and then fried up some potato fries in that, and like mind blowing. It's so good. And it's amazing to me that more people are not super excited about these products because they're often cheaper. And in some cases, people are just trying to find folks that'll take it because it's getting tossed. The bones too. What an amazing source of nutrition for bone broth. Are you looking for ways to market? Are you looking for ideas for how to use it?
Yeah, the farmers I work with are having a hard time marketing bone broth. I'm not sure of anybody who's trying to render lard for cooking use, but I think the gamey lanolinly quality of those products turns a lot of consumers off. I mean, I come from a big lamb eating family, and even when I try to make lamb bone broth, my wife often stops me at the beginning of the process because of the way it makes the house smell. I work with the value-added producers she's doing a great job, but she's struggling to find a palatable lamb broth that people like to eat. And I'm working with some value-added producers who are taking fat products and making like balms and soaps, but I'm not familiar with any of them who are doing that with tallow from lamb or utilizing lamb fat. And I assume it has to do with the lanolin quality, like the smell that associated with it. I mean, I love that smell personally. I find it comforting, but I'm not sure I would want to necessarily use a product that had that smell with it as a lip balm. But maybe there's a way of opening people's minds. I'm looking for answers.
Yeah, I think that there's a couple things. One, there's ways to process it to where it really pulls out most of the smell. I mean, I'm a little bit nose blind to it just because I'm around it all the time. But I work with a gal who buys some of my tallow and has turned it into a face moisturizer, and people's response has been that they wouldn't have been able to tell you that there was any sort of animal product in there. So I know there's ways to render it that'll pull out a lot of that smell. Some of it is going to be the animals that are being used. Some of them just are a little bit more strongly scented. But I do think that that's something we can use the power of social media for too, is sharing recipes, sharing the process with people, piquing people's interests, kind of turning the tide a little bit. I think when more people know that there's other people out there using it, then it doesn't seem so foreign. And that's something that I'm grateful for social media. I mean, mutton, when I use the term mutton, it often turns people away, but the more I share recipes and the products that I'm using, the more I have people over and share the food or do a workshop and serve mutton burgers at the workshop, people are, they're starting to realize that their prejudice against it was something that they were just told at one point, you know, that this isn't tasty until they try it. So maybe there's a little bit of that story that we can help retell.
Well, did you ever hear about World War II? And
Yes.
I recently heard about that. I thought it makes so
Mhm.
much sense. If you're given this nasty,
Yep.
it's gonna carry down.
Yeah, and for those that
Absolutely.
heard the story, there's basically like during World War II, a lot of rations included this really nasty mutton, and so a lot of people's experience of eating lamb and mutton was tainted by that, and it sort of created
Mhm.
this whole perception that it was yucky and gamey and not something people should be eating.
Mhm.
Which alongside like just sort of the collapse of the domestic wool industry has really eroded
Mhm.
production on a commercial scale.
Mhm.
Um, well, I want to also leave a couple minutes at the very end of this for Aubrey to preview a really cool new tool that Good Meat Project is rolling out. But are there any other burning questions from the audience before we pivot away from that? One last call.
I had one quick one, Beth. Oh, Jenny, please go. I think I saw your hand raised. Oh,
Or there was a
She's got flies over there too, like I do.
it's
Is that-
dangerous. You can't dangerous to move in these situations. Kimberly, I was curious, you have such evocative names for your hides on your website that I imagine do a great service for you in marketing them. What's your creative process?
Pull that part. No.
Is that just, you just look at them and get inspired? Is there anything?
My kids help me a lot. I mean, the 6 and 9-year-old boy don't come up with the greatest, but I don't know, it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. And really every sheep here really does almost have a name. If it doesn't have a name, it has a way we know it. So we just thought, why not do that? We spend so much time with every hide. It should get a name. So it's just fun. Yeah, no, I look at it and just think, and I love reading. So it usually has something to do with something we're reading at the time.
I love that. I think that's a great tip for folks to really, really put some thought into those names, because that can go a long way in telling the story of those hides in just, 1 or 2 words.
Absolutely.
If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to find you? Probably on the Insta for both of you, or is there something better?
I'm trying to move towards email. I'm not on Instagram. Like I said, I can't figure out the balance. The love-hate thing. But livingskytannery.com is where I have a newsletter sign up. And I'm going to start trying to share more about our process over there. And then livingsky.com is where we sell our hides.
I just dropped it in the chat. And Lacey, you have any handles or contact you want us to share?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram under Fireheart Shepherdess, and that is also my website. And on my website, you can sign up for my very, very occasional emails. That's the part I struggle with, is remembering to keep my email subscribers up to date on product drops and workshops, but I'm trying hard to remember.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your generosity of knowledge. I learned a ton for sure. I think I can say the same for our attendees. Okay, Aubrey, I'm going to throw it over to you for just a couple minutes to see something really, really cool we've been working on.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you, Lacey, Jean, and Kimberly. That was amazing. You guys are just so masterful in what you're doing and doing such great work in this space. So thank you for that. Yeah, I wanted to note a couple exciting things coming up. First of all, I'm dropping in the chat the link to sign up for our next Lowdown. This will be the final one for the fall. It's going to be navigating custom exempt sales. So we all know that it's hard to get in with USDA processors. And so we're going to be looking at all the ins and outs of regulations and marketing and everything to do with custom exempt. So please join us for that. That's going to be on November 14th, same time, same place, and that'll be the last one for our fall series. Okay, great. And then we have a little inside look for you all. You're truly the first people to officially hear about this. We just launched a new feature on our website called the Good Meat Finder. I'm going to share my screen so you all can see what I'm talking about here. So there's a lot of finder maps out there, but we got a grant from the ASPCA Fund to End Factory Farming to develop a brand new one. And what's unique about this finder is that this is for everybody along the whole meat supply chain. So farmers, ranchers, butchers, restaurants, retail, food trucks, co-ops, anybody who is sourcing, raising, selling, cooking meat that's raised according to our good meat values, which is centering land, people, and animals, can be on this map. And so you can filter by, so customers can come on here, they can look by location, so their hometown, or if they're traveling and want to see what restaurant or what grocery store might be carrying good meat, they can find it here on this map. And then there's all these filters that you can use to look for the kind of products that you're interested in, specific certifications, what practices are being used, business models. It runs the whole gamut. So we really wanted to give consumers the agency to make choices according to their own values rather than narrowing it down to just one specific certification or one product type or one producer. So it's meant to be very comprehensive. It just went live, and we are right now focusing on kind of the phase 1 of launching this, which is getting producers on here. So we really encourage you to go ahead and get listed. The form takes just a few minutes to fill out, and then we'll list you right here on our finder. And then once we get some listings on here, we're going to do a big push out to the public, and we'll do press releases, and it'll be a really great way to get your incredible businesses that are focusing on value-based meat out to the people who are looking for it. So we want to make good meat the easy choice and not the hard choice, which is what it is right now. So this is our step in that direction. So let me just drop in the chat the direct URL for you all to find this. And hang on. Stop share, and let me just throw this in there for you guys. And then we'll also send out an email that will have links to the books that were mentioned today, to Kimberly and Lacey Jean's websites and Instagram, and we'll also send out the link to this Good Meat Finder. There it is right there. So feel free to click on that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we also did do a past webinar series on pet treats. So maybe we can drop the link into for that into that email as well. But just a reminder, you can always find our past webinar recordings on our website if you want to go see other weird things I've said in the past, or weird people before me. Wonderful. All right, and with that, we are at the bottom of the hour. It's 10:59. Thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate you all. I hope you have wonderful days, and we will see you back here in November, where I'm going to be my own best guest. You can hear me talk about the Lazy R Ranch, and also I'm going to be joined by my best friend, Alex Machado, talking about selling sheep. So it will be fun, if nothing else, I guarantee.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Thanks for having me. Bye.